When we see these incredible ancient monuments or read timeless stories, we usually think about the kings and queens, right? But what about the people who actually built them, painted them, and wrote them? Well, today we're going to dive into the world of these often anonymous masterminds of ancient India, the engineers, artists, and scientists whose work is, frankly, still mind-blowing. Okay, let's get into it. So our story kicks off with something that seems to defy the laws of nature. This is the famous iron pillar in Delhi. Just think about that for a second. A millennium and a half of intense sun, torrential monsoons, and it's basically rust-free. Even today, scientists are still trying to figure out exactly how they pulled it off. And that just begs the question, doesn't it? How was this even possible? Who were these people with such an incredible grasp of science? This single pillar, you see, it's like a doorway into a whole lost world of brilliance, a world filled with amazing skills in architecture, art, and so much more. All right, so let's use this ironclad mystery as our jumping-off point. It's time to uncover some of the other spectacular achievements from this golden age of innovation. From that one pillar, let's zoom way out and look at the truly monumental stuff. I mean, this same period saw the creation of these absolutely breathtaking structures for worship. The genius here wasn't just in the details, it was in the massive scale and the sacred design. So, one of the most iconic buildings you'll see is the stupa. At its core, it's a simple mound, often holding a little box with sacred relics inside, maybe even from the Buddha himself. But it's also a deeply spiritual place, designed with a path called the Pradakshina so that people could walk around it clockwise as a sign of devotion. Now, here's what I find so cool about this, looking at the Great Stupa at Sanchi. These weren't just vanity projects for kings. We found inscriptions that show everyone pitched in. Merchants, farmers, garland makers, even ivory carvers. All contributed money and skill to build and decorate these amazing gateways. It was a real community effort. Now, as time went on, another kind of sacred building started popping up, the temple. And the most important room, the very heart of the temple, was called the Garbha Griha. That literally translates to the womb house. It was the inner sanctum, a sacred, quiet place where the statue of the main god or goddess was kept and all the important rituals were performed. And this slide really shows the incredible range of engineering talent back then. On one hand, you had temples built the way you'd expect, stacking baked bricks from the ground up. But on the other hand, you had something totally different, monolithic temples. These weren't built at all. They were carved. Just imagine the skill. You have to carve an entire complex building out of one single giant piece of rock, starting from the top and working your way down. One mistake and the whole thing is ruined. There's just zero room for error. But you know, these amazing structures weren't just empty stone shells. No, they were alive. They were canvases for incredible stories told in sculpture and in vibrant color, bringing the architecture itself to life. The carvings on the railings and gateways of stupas were kind of like ancient comic books. They showed scenes from the Buddha's life or from the Jatakas, which are stories about his past lives. Remember, most people couldn't read back then, so this was how you learned about history and faith. Art was basically a textbook for everyone. And then you have Ajanta. I mean, wow. Here, entire monasteries were painstakingly carved right out of the cliffs. And inside, the walls are just covered in these stunning paintings. The colors, which they made from plants and minerals, are so brilliantly crafted that they're still vivid and bright today, 1,500 years later. And the most incredible part? We have no idea who these artists were. They created these masterpieces in the dark and then just disappeared from history. But the genius of this era wasn't just something you could see. It was also a time of huge literary breakthroughs, when some of the world's greatest stories were finally written down. We're talking about the epics. These were huge, sprawling poems about heroic men and women filled with stories about the gods. They explored all the big questions: duty, justice, love, war, and they really shaped the entire culture for generations to come. Just listen to the raw emotion in these lines. They're from a famous Tamil epic called the Silappatikaram. This is a woman named Kannagi, whose husband was just wrongly executed by the king. It's this powerful cry of grief and rage against injustice. You see, these weren't just stories. They were deep dives into morality and power. This whole period was just buzzing with literary creation. You had incredible Tamil epics like the Silappadigram and the Manimekalai, and at roughly the same time, those ancient Sanskrit stories that had been passed down orally for centuries, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, were finally written down in the versions we know today. Okay, so we've got architecture, art, literature, but believe it or not, the creative explosion didn't stop there. This was also an age of unbelievable scientific discovery, where brilliant minds were mapping the stars and the human body with stunning accuracy. Let's talk about a real intellectual giant of the ancient world, Aryabhata. This guy was a master of both math and astronomy, and the book he wrote, the Aryabhatiyam, was hundreds of years ahead of its time. I mean, get this. At a time when many people around the world believed the sun went around the Earth, Aryabhata figured out the day and night happen because the Earth is spinning on its own axis. He came up with scientific reasons for eclipses, pushing aside old superstitions, and he worked out a method for calculating the circumference of a circle. And here's the really wild part. His calculation is so precise that it's almost identical to the formula we all learn in school today. That level of mathematical insight for that long ago it's absolutely staggering. And that same scientific spirit was applied to the human body. This is when the health science known as Ayurveda was really being developed. You had pioneers like Charaka, whose book on medicine, the Charak Samhita, was foundational. And then there was Sushruta, who, in his Sushruta Samhita, described complex surgical procedures in such detail that many call him the father of surgery. Genius wasn't just for building temples, it was for healing people. Which brings us right back to where we started. A rustless pillar, temples carved from a single stone, timeless epics, and astronomy that was centuries ahead of its time. We know a few of the names behind this genius, like Aryabhata, but so many others, the engineers, the sculptors, the painters, are completely anonymous. And it leaves you with this one big, fascinating question. If this is the amazing stuff we know about, what other marvels are still out there, just waiting for us to find?